Yeah. Okay, so we are learning the Maimer Baha'aleis Chasaneris Tavshin Chav Tes.
Noise.
Yep.
You get a noise from the other ones also.
Okay, so we're learning the Maimer Baha'aleis Chasaneris. It's a Maimer that the Rebbe said in Shabbos Parshas Baha'aleis Chatavshin Chav Tes, and it was published in honor of Tes of Sivan, Tavshin Nun Aleph. That's when the Rebbe edited it. Was Magia the Maimer and had it published. And the date of Tes of Sivan is? Yeah, I should.
16th day of Stephen.
It's the second. Okay, the 15th day.
Test Zion is not the 16th. It's not from Zion. I was Zion here.
No. You see, it's interesting. With pleasure. Tesvav Sivan. Why is there? But last year we also learned the Maimer on Tesvav Sivan. They're only the same. Why is there been making
Tesla Stephen,
a date?
Frank Rebbe was arrested in Tesla Stephen. Is that correct?
No. That finishes Yud Beis Sivan. So what day is the Rebbe commemorating and making a task out of? Tesvav Sivan is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested. Thank you. Tesvav Sivan is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested. The Rebbe is taking over the day of the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe and turning it into a Yom Tov, turning it into a day where you say Ma'amorim. Yeah, when was the Alter Rebbe arrested?
He wouldn't be arrested.
Alter Rebbe was arrested. Let's think.
Sometime shortly after. That's when he was freed. We always celebrate the redemption.
53 days. Go
You
back.
want to go back 53 days. You also have to know if Cheshvan was a Molay or a Chaser. But Al Kolpanim, shortly after Sukkot is when the Alter Rebbe was actually arrested. They came to arrest him in Cholamoid, Sukkot, and he was actually arrested after. A long story in that. But we don't commemorate the day that he was arrested. When was the Middle Rebbe arrested? We don't commemorate any of those days. Over here, Tesvav Sivan, the day that the Alter Rebbe, you see it in the Dibra Maskell. It's not in the copies. It says Yom Hascholas Ma'asori Shal Kvekrish Zad Memeretzes Vasedim. The day of the beginning of the imprisonment of the Frierdiker Rebbe. This Maimer is in honor of that, and there were several Maimarim in honor of that day, or at least published in honor of that day. So the Rebbe is making that, like you said before, the arrest is part of the Geula, which is part of why we're all here today in America. The Rebbe discusses that Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, the Geula of Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, is actually what led to the spreading of Hasidus and of Torah to the Chatzi Kader HaTachtin, which is actually a crucial and essential stage in the coming of Mashiach, and which is the stage that we are actually living and breathing right here, right now. So it's very much our day, and they were saying that Tesvav Sivan is also part of that. So we have a Maimer for Tesvav Sivan. Now, I wanted to learn a Maimer that has to do with Shavuos, because Shavuos is coming up, but there's only today and next week's share before Shavuos. There's not going to be enough time to learn a Maimer, so I chose the next date up. However, this Maimer also talks about Shavuos. We'll see later in the Maimer. Maybe we'll even get to it next week on time for Shavuos. This Maimer is very much connected to Shavuos also. So we're also learning the Shavuos in it. Okay, so let us begin. The Maimer is printed in Sefer Mamorim Melukat Hey. You could find it online on the Mafteach app. If you go to the year Tavshin Chav Tes, Tes Zayin Sivan. Okay. It says in the pasuk, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Aaron that when he kindles the candles of the menorah, the Isa B'Lukatetera, it says in Lukatetera on this pasuk, the Neris Hem Nishamas, Neris. What are the candles? B'Pnimi Yanim. Neris are the Nishamas of the Yidden, the Jewish souls. Like it says in the pasuk in Mishli, Neir Havaya Nishmas Adam. That the neshama of a person is a candle of the Eibishter. The Neiravai is a candle of the Eibishter. That just brings in the brackets, even though it's not so negate to this Maimer. That V'zayin Haneis Tahamanera, we only have one neshama. Why are there 7 candles of the neshama? Has to do with the candles of the menorah. Then why are there 7? So he explains that the 7 candles of the menorah, Him Zayin Sugi B'nei Yisrael B'Avedas Hashem. These are 7 general types of Yidden, of ways that the Yidden serve the Eibishter, each neshama according to its nature. Yesh Eivid Me'ava Mashuch Kamayim. There's one Yid who serves the Eibishter out of a love, which can be compared to water flowing. In other words, it's going out towards something. It's drawn towards something which is the meaning of chesed, of kindness. V'yesh me'ava krispeish, and there's another neshama that serves the Eibishter out of love, which is krispeish, which can be compared to fire, which is not going towards something, but is running away, is flying up. Which this is the idea of gvura v'chulu. So the 7 candles of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash correspond to 7 different types of neshamas who serve the Eibishter according to their nature. Okay. 100 years prior to when the Rebbe said this Maimer. In other words, the Rebbe said this Maimer Tavshin Chof Tes, which is 1969. 1969. So 1869, 100 years before that, the Rebbe Marash said a Maimer on this pasuk. This that the neshamas are called candles. Why is this? It's like the Maimer Chazal in Medish. The Eibishter says to a person like this, my candle is entrusted in your hands. And your candle is entrusted in my hands. Right? It's like two people talking. They say, each one, you're holding my candle, I'm holding your candle. So too, the Eibishter Kaviyachal says, you're holding my candle, I entrusted it in your hands, and I'm holding your candle, it's in my hands. Neri biyadcha, what's the Eibishter's candle, which is being held and given over to the Yid to care for? Zuha Teira. This is the Teira of the Eibishter. Dichsiv, where do we see that Teira is a candle, is called a candle? Kinei mitzvah v'Teira. That Teira and mitzvah is the candle of mitzvah and the light of Teira. So b'chlolis, it means that the Teira is called a Neir, it's called a candle. The Neircha biyadi, what's the candle? What is our candle, your candle, the Yid's candle, on which the Eibishter is taking care of and is holding on to? Zuha nefesh, that's the person's life, it's the person's soul. But it specifically over here means, in other words, the fact that he's alive. Like it says in the pasuk, that the person's soul is a candle of the Eibishter. The same pasuk that from Mishlei that we brought before, that the Alter Rebbe brings in Likutei Torah, so the Medrash brings to say that the person's neshama is a candle. So this is the candle that belongs to us that the Eibishter is holding. And the Eibishter tells the Yidden, Shamartas Neiri, if you will guard or will preserve my candle, Ani Mishameres Nercha, I will protect and preserve your candle. In other words, that the person's neshama, the person's soul, the person's life will be good, will be okay. However, if if you don't take care of my Torah, if you don't take care of my candle, you extinguish it, I will extinguish your candle. It's an interesting madrash. Say, I have something that you need. You have something that I need. There's 2 ways you could look at it. You could either look at it that the Eibishter is Kivyachal saying, you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor, which doesn't sound, if it's, or you can look at it the other way. Look what the Eibishter did. The Eibishter lowered himself, and with so much love, and is telling us, I am dependent on you. The Eibishter is dependent on us. That's the proper way of understanding the chiddush of this, the word of this medrash over here. Not chas v'shalom that the Eibishter is saying, you do for me, I'll do for you. If not, no deal. The Eibishter is saying is I lowered myself. And because of my great love to the Yidden and my great attachment to the Yidden, I put myself in your hands. I didn't have to, nobody forced me. Out of the Eibishter's choice, he said, I'm entrusting my well-being into your hands. So this is the medrash that the Rebbe Maharash brings to bring a source for this, that a person's neshama is called a candle. So the Rebbe asks the obvious question. This, if all the Rebbe Maharash is trying to say, that a neshama is a candle, he doesn't need the medrash for this. It's explicitly stated in the pasuk, the same pasuk that the medrash brings. It's a pasuk. So if you want to make your point from a pasuk. Why do you need the whole medrash? Why does the Rebbe Maharash have to bring as a source for this idea that a person's neshama is like a candle? Why does he have to bring the medrash? The pasuk would have sufficed, and the pasuk is preeminent. And we also have to understand that seemingly there's a difference between the pasuk and the medrash. The pasuk ne'amar neir havaya nishmas adam. The pasuk that the Medrash itself quotes. So it's not necessarily a difference between the way the Rebbe Marash teaches, but it's also something to understand in the Medrash itself. What does the pasuk bring? Which pasuk does the Medrash bring? From Mishlei that says Neir Havaya Nishmas Adam, that the neshama of man is a candle of who? Is a candle of the Eibishter. So whose candle is the neshama? It's the Eibishter's candle. Shah neshama hi Neir Havaya. Over Medrash Hanal, however, what does the Medrash say? Bringing this pasuk itself, Eimer Shah neshama hi Neir Cha. He says that the neshama is the person's candle, not the Eibishter's candle. The neshama is the person's candle. The hatera, what does he call the teira? He nedi dakadish baruch Hu. The teira is what's the Eibishter's candle, but the neshama is the person's candle. So the pasuk says that the neshama is the Eibishter's candle, neir havaya. The Medrash says that the neshama is neircha, is your candle. So what's going on over here? What's the meaning of all this? The Rebbe says we could explain this all by first expanding on and introducing this idea which is explained in several Mamarim and Chassidus from different Rabbeim. The Inyan Ba'aleis Hanedis. What is the Aveda of Ba'aleis Hanedis? So the Alter Rebbe tells us that what's the idea of candles? What's the meaning of Nedis? That a Ned is a neshama of a Yid. And in the later Rabbeim and their Mamorim explain, so what's this Aveda of Ba'aleis Hanedis? They explain it as follows. Who's in charge? Who's commanded, and who's the one who lights the Nedis? Aaron a kohen. Even though a regular kohen could do it, but the tzivui, the commandment, was given to Aaron. Aaron lights the candles. In other words, he awakens the neshamas. Aaron a kohen awakens the neshamas of the Yidden, that they should have the desire, the will to go upwards, to ascend to the Eibishter. The Ad, and he awakens the neshama to such a great extent that the neshama wants to likalel ba'atzmas ein sof. The neshama wants to become absorbed in the essence of the infinite light of the Eibishter. Atzmas ein sof. The neshama isn't satisfied with becoming absorbed and ascending to Atzilis, to Madregas, and to Makifim. It wants to go to the essence of the ein sof, of the infinite light of the Eibishter. So that's what Aaron does. You have a Yid, you have his neshama, and Aaron HaKohen causes the neshama to awakens within the neshama the will and the desire and the urge to ascend towards the Eibishter and to become absorbed in him. The Hagam, seemingly this will of the neshama, this strong felt desire of the neshama to become one with the Eibishter and become absorbed in the Eibishter, that is the nature of the neshama on its own. In other words, it's already there naturally. You don't need Aaron HaKohen to awaken it. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, what's the reason, Taka? We see that the pasuk calls on neshama a neir, a candle. But why Taka? Why Taka is a neshama called a candle? Right? Like we know that Dibra Teira K'Lashem B'nei Adam. The Teira speaks in terminology and language and the vocabulary that a human being can understand. And behind this vocabulary are very deep ideas. The words that the Torah chooses to describe different things represent a deeper meaning in this idea. Right? Like Vayidaber Elikim, the Eibishter spoke, the idea of Dibur, this idea of like a king who leads his kingdom, his people through his speech. So we choose this word neir, a candle, because the neir, it has in it, it represents some idea that can give us a glimpse into a deeper dimension of the neshama if we look into it. So what does the Alter Rebbe learn from this? That it's called a neir, that the neshama is called a candle. Just as the nature of a candle, of a flame, is to ascend upwards. That's why you see the flame is constantly dancing on its wick. It doesn't stay steady because it's being held in place by the wick, but it's constantly trying to escape it and go up. The fire is continuously wanting to become one with its source, which That's why it goes up, because because the element of fire, right, from the four basic elements that all matter is made up of, which is Eish, Mayim, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Offer, fire and wind or air and water and earth, like we just had in Rambam, Sai, Shleisha Prakim, and Sai Perek Echad. So where is the element of fire? Somewhere between the atmosphere and between where the atmosphere ends and between where the moon orbits around Earth. So that's where it is. So that's why when you have a candle down here, it's constantly trying to go up to its source. You don't necessarily see that nature in everything else. For example, you take water, you put it on a shelf somewhere up high, provided that the shelf is flat, you won't see the water constantly, bubbling downwards. It's going to stay there. You tilt it, okay, it's going to run downwards. But you put it where it is, it's going to stay where it is if something is supporting it. The candle is being held down by the wick. However, it doesn't stay still. It doesn't stay steady. It flickers upwards. So Cain Hanishames, so to the soul, he beteva haratzei lalis lamaila lihikol b'mekar chaitzva. So to the neshama has in it the nature that it is constantly in a state of ratzei, in a state of running out, of running towards its source. Lalis, to ascend lamaila, upwards lihikolil, in order to become absorbed and included b'mekar chaitzva, in the source from which it was hewn. So that's the nature of the neshama, that even though the neshama is down here in this world, it wants to always become included. I'm sorry, that wasn't the right explanation. Not even though it's down here in this world, wherever the neshama may find itself. Wherever the neshama may find itself, it is always in a state of not wanting to remain with its own identity and with its own existence. The neshama always wants to go back and become part of the source from which it came from. In other words, you have types of existences that are very unaware of their source, of where they come from, and they're happy to be their own thing. That is most things. I didn't think of a muscle before we came here, but most things in the world are unaware of the source from which they came from. And therefore you don't see in their nature that they want to become bottled, that they want to lose themselves in the source from which they came from. Everything is happy being what it is. We'll have to leave it for a different day. The neshama, however, is unhappy being what it is. The neshama is constantly aware, it's constantly in touch with its source in the Ein Sof, in the infinite light of the Eibishter. And it's not happy being in its own place. It doesn't want to stay there. It never feels satisfied there. It wants to go up and become included in the Eibishter, become absorbed by the Eibishter. That's the nature of a neshama. So if so, why is it explained in the Mamarim that you need Aaron Akayin to awaken this ratzai, this desire and this urgency of the neshama to become included in its nature? The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya to be included in its source. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that this is the very nature of a neshama. So he explains like this: we need Aaron to bring out this nature of ascendancy in the neshama. Why? Because where is this neshama that we're discussing in this pasuk? This neshama finds itself down here in this world in a body, in the body of a person, in the body of a human being of flesh and blood. Through the descent of the neshama down here. And it descended down here in which way? In even of the slapshusa, in a way that it became enclosed. In other words, it morphed and it transformed into a lower type of an entity in order to become attached and become one with the body, beguf in the body. So misalim teva haratzei sheba, its essential nature of wanting to always be absorbed within the Eibishter becomes hidden. It's not expressed, it's not active, it's dormant, its nature. Right? Again, you have the neshama. Where's the natural place of a neshama? The natural place of a neshama is an element elyonim. A neshama is not an entity of this physical, material, corporal world. A neshama is a spiritual entity, if even that. belongs up in the highest realms. The Eibishter takes this neshama, and he wants this neshama to not only give life to a person, but to become part of a person's life. Not only to animate the person, but to become part of the person. And in order to do that, the Eibishter lowers the neshama, and the Eibishter draws it down and transforms it, so to speak, to become something which is much more um, of this world. Let's just put it this way. The neshama becomes less refined, so to speak. It becomes, comparatively speaking, it becomes more coarse in order to be able to relate and connect to the body. The neshama as it is would never be able to enclose itself in the body. So the Eibishter lowered the neshama. Once the Eibishter lowered the neshama, this nature of the neshama that it always wants to be absorbed in its source becomes dormant. And it becomes like most other types of existences where it doesn't feel, it loses its awareness and its strong connection and its strong attachment to its source, and it's good where it is. It doesn't feel the need to go back to its source. It feels okay being where it is. This is what happens when a neshama comes down into a body. It's explained at length in these Ma'amorim. The Mahatamim al Zeh Shanashamis Tatzilis Nikraim Zera Adam. Vanashamis Debian Nikraim Zera Behema. One of the reasons why Nishamas of Atzilus, which are far and few in between, are called the seed of man. In other words, they are on the level of a human. Vanashamis Debian Nikraim Zera Behema. And the Nishamis of Bia, of the lower worlds from Atzilus, are called the seed of a behemoth, the seed of a man, of a beast. In other words, they are not on the level of a human, they're on the level of an animal. What does this mean? Of course, this is all relatively speaking. We're talking over here in Nishamas. They're way beyond a physical animal and way beyond a physical person. But conceptually speaking, in the upper worlds, the Nishamas of Atzilus are on the level of a human, of a man, of Adam, and the Nishamas of Bia are on the level of behemoth, of a beast. Nishamas of Atzilus, Gambiri dasam lamata. Even after the Nishamas descend down here into this world, these great Nishamas of the greatest tzaddikim, the leaders of the generation, these Nishamas, even when they descend down here into this world, their nature of constant running back up towards the Eibishter is still revealed in them. It doesn't become dormant. It doesn't become covered over by the body. And that's why they're titled with the name, they're given the name of a person. Why? Because we have in Kehelas Hashem Ruach Adam Ha'elahi Lamayla. What is the quintessential nature and characteristic of a person? Is that he's always drawn upwards. A human being is always drawn upwards. He's always looking for meaning in life. He's always looking for purpose in life. He always needs to know that there's some larger picture, that there's a reason for his being. He's not happy just indulging himself in the physical, animalistic pleasures of this world and in looking on the world as some random cosmic error, which is the past is one of the reasons why there is such a high degree of unhappiness and drug abuse and suicide out in the world, because you have people and they're very sensitive. They're human souls, and naturally they want to connect to this higher idea. They understand that their ultimate completion, that their self-actualization, I'm talking on a very human level, never mind that their self-actualization is actually brought about by reaching up to higher concepts, to ideas of a higher reality, that they're part of a larger picture, a more spiritual idea, a more spiritual existence. And what does society today tell people? And it's drilled into their heads from when they're born, basically. It's knocked into their heads that you are just an animal. There is no meaning. There is no Eibishter. There is no spirituality. It's just what you want to believe in it. And you tell this to a person, since it's an essential part of his nature. Adam is always looking upwards, right? The human being is unique amongst the animals, like it says in Ayem Yem, not amongst the animals, it's unique amongst the creatures. That the human being stands upright. He stands upright, and his head is always seeing what's above him. His eyes are always aware of what's above him. So that is the essential nature of a person. of the mind, of the intellect, which is the highest faculty of a person, is that it wants to rise up into higher ideas than just the physical, flesh and blood manifestation of a person. So these neshamas, even when they're down here in this world, they maintain this nature of wanting to go up and become absorbed in the infinite light of the Eibishter. Since they maintain this nature of wanting to ascend, so therefore they're titled a person. They're given the name of a person. However, the other neshamas of Biyah, which like the Rebbe is going to say, Vaneshamas to Biyah Shehim Rei Vaneshamas, the vast majority of neshamas, certainly in our generation, are neshamas of Biyah. They're neshamas of the lower worlds. What happens to them when the Eibishter takes the neshama and lowers it down into this world? When they descend down here and they become enclosed in a body of flesh and blood, what happens to them? They are drawn after the body and the instincts of the body. And the physical matters of this world. It says the Gashmi, the physical ones, not necessarily the Chumristic ones, not necessarily the grubber ones, but physical matters. And they don't lose Chas Shalom, but their nature of wanting to ascend becomes inactive. And that's why it drowns. It's covered over. It's covered over, just like something that's drowned in water. You look at the water, you see on the surface, you don't see it at all. It's the same thing. That's why they're called an animal. Why? Because what does Mishle say? What does Kehelah say on the animal? What is the spirit of an animal interested in? Where is the animal going? It's going towards below. Its head is always looking downwards. I had the merit. I don't know if you'd call it the merit, but I was able to visit the Kruger National Park in South Africa. Right? It's you see the wonders of the Eibishter. After that, you say a pasuk in Tehillim. The meaning of the pasuk of Tehillim is Merav Masecha Hashem, and all the other psukim we're talking about the different animals. You feel it in a different way. I was there for a few days, and there was one observation that I had, which is all the animals, or at least what do you call them, the animals that eat grass, the herbivores. The entire day, if you watch them, you take these trucks or you go with your own car and you sit and you see mostly the grazers, the herbivores. Nearly the entire day they're eating. Not nearly. Every time you see them, they're always eating or picking up their head, looking. Did they just hear of the sound of a predator coming along or pick up a scent of a predator? Otherwise, the entire time their head is in the ground and they're eating and eating and eating and eating. That's what animals do. They're eating and eating. So they're always looking downwards towards the earth. So it's the same thing with the neshamas of Biyah. When they're in their place, they taka have the nature of wanting to become absorbed in their source in what is higher than them. However, once they're lowered down here into this world, so they lose that. And not only that, they're also affected by the body and by the matters of this physical world, and they start to become drawn towards the things that are below them, towards the things of this physical world. So, what is the job and what is the work of Aaron HaKohen to awaken and to reveal this nature of this urgent run and this urgent ascent towards the Eibishter that also the neshamas of Biyah have, but just became dormant, became sunk, became covered over by the body. But they have it. So Aaron HaKohen, his job is to come to these neshamas of Biyah and to awaken with them as human beings here in this world, to awaken within these neshamas the will that they naturally have to go up to the Eibishter. And this is the idea that we teach it as you will kindle the natives. That is the best way to teach it in English. But if you're medayik in the word, it's an inyan of aliyah, when you will bring up the candles. In other words, what does Aaron HaKohen do? Aaron HaKohen works and brings about that the nature that the neshama has on its own to ascend and to become one, to become absorbed in the infinite light of the Eibishter, that it should be revealed down here, even when the neshama is in this physical world. Okay. Umavur Bahadrushim. It's explained in the Ma'amarim of the Rabbeim. Tam Shahalos Sanderis Gili Teva Haratze Valiyah Danasham Sali Aaron Dafke. Why is it Aaron Akain's job to reveal this nature that the neshamas have? Yeah. What does that have to do with Aaron specifically? And what does Aaron have that he brings to these neshamas to awaken within them the will, the desire to ascend, to go up towards the Eibishter? So it says, Ki ba'arin ksiv, when you get to Aaron Akain, it says, Keshemen hatoiv ala roish. It's a pasuk in Tehillim, like the fine oil that is on the head. In other words, it's like a cream. Think of it like a cream. We don't typically use oil these days, but in the olden days they would use oil. Perhaps it wasn't just a regular oil, but it's like a cream. It's like a facial cream. So like this fine oil that's on the head, and it's there in abundance, and therefore Yerid al Zakan, and also drips down onto the beard, Zakan Aaron, and not Stama beard, Aaron Akain's beard, Sheyerid al Pimidesav, which Aaron Akain's beard is a long flowing beard which extends down beneath, beneath his collar, beneath down from his head, even further down towards his clothing. The Indian is Kan Aaron, it's explained in Lukut Teira. That's Kan Aaron who Hilchas Teira. Aaron Akain's beard, this represents the halachas of the Torah. Okay, so the Rebbe doesn't get into it over here, so without getting into it. But the bottom line is that Aaron Akain represents and brings with him the halachas of Torah. Validei ha-Torah, and through Torah, which Torah is Torah has in it the nature of light. Wherever Torah goes, it brings light into the place that it goes to. So therefore, Misgalu Meir Teva Aliyah Nashama, the light of Torah comes and it reveals, and it also causes to shine the natural state of wanting to become absorbed in what's above it that the neshama possesses. And this nature the neshama maintains even after it lowered itself and it became enclosed in the body. However, it just was hidden. It was dormant. So Aaron Akain comes and he shines the light of Torah on the neshama, and the light of Torah causes a reaction in the neshama that its own light should shine. That the neshama itself, its nature of ascending and become towards the Eibishter and becoming absorbed in the Ein Sof, in the infinite light of the essence of the Eibishter, should be revealed even when it is down here in this world. So in other words, you have a neshama. What does the neshama want to do? The neshama always wants to become one with the Eibishter. You have a problem that the neshama descended into a place of darkness, and this darkness influenced the neshama. It's not that the neshama maintained its light and came to a dark place. No, we said that it's mislabish in the body. The Eibishter lowered it in a way that it became kivyachol less refined. In other words, its light was darkened. So Aaron Akain comes, he brings the light of Torah, and the light of Torah rekindles the light of the neshama itself, and now the neshama itself ascends towards the Eibishter, or it doesn't ascend chas v'shalom, but it stands in a condition of ascending, of always wanting to go out and to become connected and remain attached with its source, with the Eibishter. And this is this is the work of Aaron Akain. And with this we can understand the connection between the Maimer Chazal Im Shamarta Snedi that Rebbe Maharash brings in his Maimer on the pasuk of Baalais Chesanedis. What's the connection of this Maimer Chazal that Rebbe Maharash brings in the Maimer on the pasuk of Baalais Chesanedis? Because they're both the same idea. What's this idea that the Eibishter says that I will preserve and guard your candle, to make sure that your candle isn't extinguished? He teaches like this: the candle of the neshama. What does that mean? The teva haratzei va'aliyah shala, the nature of the neshama to stand in an urgent running and going towards and ascending towards the Eibishter. The neshama needs a preservation. The neshama needs to be guarded and needs to be kept. In what sense? That its nature of wanting to become one with the Eibishter should remain revealed down here, even in this world. And how does that happen? How does that happen? That happens by guarding and preserving the light of Torah, because when the neshama learns Torah, the Torah reveals this nature within the neshama to become one with the Eibishter. And who al derech and Indian the Baha'leis Ches Haneres, it's the same concept of this pasuk Baha'leis Ches Haneres Shaladei Aaron, who represents Torah. He kindles the light of the neshama that its nature of wanting to ascend and become absorbed in the Eibishter should be revealed. So they're both the same concept, the same idea. Preserving the neshama's nature of becoming becoming included and absorbed in the Eibishter happens through Neri, the light of the Eibishter, the Torah, and that's the idea of Baha'leis Ches Haneres, where Aaron HaKohen causes the neshama to become, that its nature should be revealed and should want to become one and become included in the Eibishter through Torah. Okay. Did he